Welcome to the Octopod. I'm Kyle Davis, head of the Office of the CTO. Join us as we dive into the latest technologies and trends shaping business. Whether you're a tech enthusiast, a business leader, or just looking to stay ahead in the digital age, this podcast is for you. Let's unlock opportunities with technology together. Let's jump in.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to my Hybrid Trends podcast series. This time I'm joined by Paige from Verkada. I'm going to talk about this topic of the rise of smart retail security solutions. Paige, do you want to just introduce yourself to everyone?
Yes, thanks, Rob. So I am Paige Dougherty. I'm one of the enterprise account executives for Verkada. Ultimately, I work with organisations in the north of the UK to implement hybrid cloud physical security.
Excellent. So we're going to really break this into three pieces, but the overall topic really foundations around that loss prevention, shoplifting, shrinkage, logistics challenges, etc. But really we want to take the foundations from that conversation and then build into how can we actually use that data to help drive far greater decisions within the retail sector that are far more reaching than just, the loss prevention conversation. And then finally, one of the things that we've been really focused on recently is how can we help organizations build a business case to actually adopt this technology, because sometimes it's not as obvious as it might seem as to how to get the investment from the board, etc. So that gives us our three parts. What have we been seeing in trends? What can we do from a direct shoplifting, shrinkage, loss perspective? Second part, then we're going to build on how we can make more informed data decisions and leverage that base platform for decision making. And then finally talk about the business case side of things. Let's crack on and talk a little bit about this loss prevention area, Paige. What are the trends that you're seeing or have been seeing over the last sort of year or two?
So the trends are, of course, looking a little bit more negative than they were. 79% increase of shoplifting year on year. And I think it's the way the economy is at the moment and the cost of living. I think that is a massive contribution to that number. And if we look at shoplifting incidences that were recorded in 2023, for example, it's at 430,000, right? And that is just the ones that we know of. That's the ones that have ultimately been reported. To put a number to that, it equates to about 3.3 billion. And that's just in the retail space.
Then is that a global number, Paige, or is that a UK?
That's UK.
That's UK only, right?
Yeah.
So for them retailers that are delivering globally, that's going to be exponentially larger.
Yes. Absolutely. And I think it's really important to look at what shoplifting means, because I suppose if I say that to you, what's the first thing that comes to mind when we say shoplifting, Rob?
I think the standard connotation is if someone's walked in and put something under their jacket and tries to walk out the store with it, that's the standard definition, I guess.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably what comes to most people's minds. But when I am speaking with organisations, specifically in the retail space, it's more the organised crime. It's these larger scale, these planned thefts. And to give you an example, a bit of a bizarre name, but there's a gang going around called the Champagne Gang at the moment. And ultimately, they're hitting retailers really hard. They're not just going in there and stealing a pint of milk or a loaf of bread because the economy's hard and the cost of living's difficult. This is planned. I've heard reports of them filling wheelie bins full of alcohol. And it's a planned attack, and they're robbing on a large scale ultimately.
And I assume they're doing surveillance and recon on sites and locations to work out security and all this sort of stuff. So, deterrence can be really effective against this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. I think when we speak to retailers at the minute, there isn't a great deal that they're doing today in forms of deterrent. It's very reactive. So it's after the matter. They're looking at their CCTV, for example, and they're taking a look at that footage to see what has happened. There is a little turn at the minute, and there's initiatives such as the Pegasus initiative. I don't know, are you aware of that? Have you heard of it?
Not personally, no, and maybe some of the viewers haven't, so worth digging into that a bit.
Yeah, so ultimately it's data sharing. So it is between retailers. Say, for example, you have a prolific offender that is known, and this could be nationwide because sometimes they're hitting Glasgow, then they're hitting lower down the north, sometimes coming as far down to London. It's not that they're targeting a small territory. So ultimately the Pegasus initiative encourages the data sharing, so that the photographs of those criminals and those prolific offenders, so that not just within your organisation and your retailer, you're sharing collectively. So all of the retailers are ultimately, they've got each other's backs. Now, it's all good and well sharing these clips and these prolific offenders, but how do we then implement that so that we're aware when they are on site? Because if I gave you a photograph of an individual and I asked you to look at a really busy store, do you think you could necessarily spot them when you've got that foot flow?
I wouldn't have thought so, given how busy some retailers are, and then obviously staff turnover, shifts, patterns, etc. You're not going to be able to have everyone looking for every possible offender as a manual process, and you're not going to employ people to stand there and do it as well, and even they probably wouldn't be able to do it.
Absolutely. And this is what we see when we speak to retailers. So typically they will have a control room and there will be a number of people in there ultimately monitoring the CCTV, and they've got screenshots, images, photographs of these prolific offenders, so they're keeping an eye out for them. And this is where AI really comes into play, because there is technology, and this is something that we work with our organisations with, that you can ultimately upload those images. So you can say, if this person is spotted on any of my cameras across my organisation, whether that's UK-wide, nationwide, globally even, we can start looking at proactive alerts. So not just necessarily alerting centrally, but let's alert the shop members on shift at that point. So then we start going into the realms of, let's make the staff feel even safer.
I was going to say, there's a knock-on effect for staff safety and staff retention and all that sort of stuff, which again will come through with the service levels they provide to customers, because if they feel safe and secure, they'll serve the customers better, which hopefully, drives loyalty and in the end, increase revenues for the retailer.
Yeah. And absolutely that. We aren't expecting to send out proactive alerts that the prolific offender is on site and expecting that worker to go and confront them or try and restrain them. I do hear reports that some people take it upon themselves to do these things. But ultimately, it is about that safety element, so that they're aware that somebody that is sort of in the nature of behaving in that manner is in the store, so that ultimately they feel safer. And then we start looking at things like staff retention, and that's where it really generates that ROI.
Yeah, and that's where I guess the technologies come on in the last few years, generative AI, etc., being baked into these platforms now to be able to do that auto recognition piece, even through caps and masks and all sorts of, obscure, what's the word I'm looking for, obscure ways that people might try and mask their identity, etc.
Yeah.
The technology is very clever now to be able to identify these, far better than a human's ever going to be able to do it. And it's doing it all the time as well. It's not just when you happen to be looking at the right screen.
Yeah. This is the thing. Best will in the world, we're never going to be as good at catching these things, the human eye, as AI is. And that's just the way the world's going. And I think traditionally, physical security's been left in the dirt a little bit, and it's just reactive, it's just something we monitor. But if it's used correctly and it's used proactively, there is a lot of benefit there. And the conversations that I often have, we start having that conversation about retail theft on the floor, external theft, and the further conversation we have, we start looking at the numbers, and internally there's a lot of fraud goes on as well. And that is something that is very, very hard traditionally to monitor and understand and pinpoint and measure as it stands today. But the way technology is moving currently, we're now offering proactive alerting for things like single transactions taking place. If, say, someone's working a till and a refund takes place and there's only one person there, is that really a refund or is that an internal issue?
So you're looking for behavioural patterns and in co-workers and staff as well as potential consumers to look for behaviour that could indicate fraud of some form within the store.
Yeah, ultimately, where it's quite a simple process in that it's head counting technology. So we will say, look, a refund's taking place. There are integrations with the POS system that can integrate with the physical security, which a lot of people, if you speak to, they're like, why would I want to integrate my POS system with my physical security? Well, you can start getting alerts for internal fraud that's taken place, is why. We even do a lot of it in the distribution space. So there are a number of fashion retailers that I work with currently. And to break it down really simply, if you would order something online, and say a pair of trainers, for example, if it arrived and there was only one shoe missing, you'd raise a complaint, you'd expect a full set of shoes to be sent out. You'd expect both trainers, right?
Yeah.
And as it stands today, If that claim was fraudulent from you as the consumer, the retailers, they've got no way to prove how was that packed without going through footage of thousands and thousands of parcels being packed. So what we're working on a lot at the moment, and which is the ROI is crazy when we start drilling into the numbers, considering a pair of trainers today, I mean, you can testify the prices of trainers have really gone up as it is. And ultimately how we've got it structured is you call in, you say, I've only got one shoe in the box. What's your order number, Rob? We punch that in. Because we've got that integration piece with, say, your pick and pack system or your barcode scanner, we can jump straight to the footage of that pick and pack taking place.
And then prove whether actually was there a potential for the mispack or the thing to be missing from that side of it. So
exactly that. And if that's happening, I mean, there are forums and telegrams and all sorts of people are cotton on to the retailers who will just ultimately pay out. So a retailer
start to take advantage of that, and especially, like you say, with the economic climate the way it is, people are under significant financial pressures in areas and will be looking for ways to survive in some cases, isn't it? So
absolutely.
It does make sense. And does that extend then, I guess, to the wider supply chain as well? So, what left warehouse A and arrived at store B, you'll know what's potentially on a lorry, what was in that consignment, etc. So sort of dealing with that sort of supply chain loss challenges as well.
Yeah, so it's very straightforward the way that we're doing it today. So anything that basically generates a timestamp and generates data, we can basically sync that with physical security footage. So whether that is a pallet arriving, there's some sort of scan that takes place throughout the journey of that pallet from, say, warehouse A to warehouse B, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
So we can very easily, if that pallet's got a barcode number or it's had a scan, we can punch in that data.
There's only 6 boxes on it left, and there was only 5 when it arrived, and therefore the problem was in that window.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and when you're talking pallets and multiple products on there, the potential loss that we're looking to avoid, it can be astronomical for some organisations.
And I guess that's part of the value of having a unified platform across your entire estate then as well, rather than we have this CCTV platform in the warehouse and we have a different physical security system in this store and a different one in the head office, for example, and now we can't actually correlate the data points between them. Whereas if we're centralizing them into a cloud platform of some form with centralized metadata, then we can do that sort of holistic scanning and indexing across the entire estate, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And the amount of organisations that I speak to, and they've got multiple different systems, not even from site to site. Sometimes one site can have multiple systems within. And you get loads of benefits. So you get the loss prevention on the back end for the warehouse and the distribution space, but it comes back to what's going on at a store level. So if you have got notifications happening for prolific offenders, pretty pointless if you've just got it in one store. You want to protect, if you're a retailer with hundreds of stores nationwide, you want to understand, okay, are we being targeted as a retailer? Is it a specific area that's being targeted? And you can start using that data to then say, right, we need more security, like physical human security resource in specific areas because you've got
more that rise of something, whether it's a gang or whether it's whatever it happens to be. That makes sense. And we've used the term physical security a lot, but we've talked a lot about video data. Does it extend to more than that, or are we focusing just on camera data, or are we extending that to other physical security pieces that are integrated into the ecosystem?
Yeah, so definitely an extension and definitely a benefit of the single platform we mentioned previously, not just for, say, CCTV data, but for other elements of physical security. So things like access control, for example. A big focus at the moment is controlling who's on site and who's where at a given moment. If somebody gets into an area they shouldn't do, say, for example, a staff room, and a member of the public gets in there, how did they get in there? If you were looking at that today, you'd think, right, well, I'm going to have to go back through the footage, roughly what time, I think. And it's not very intuitive. It's not going to tell you straight away where the issue was. However, having everything on a single platform, what we're able to do is we're able to generate active notifications for things like tailgating and doors being held open, which is huge because a lot of theft that happens, say, in the back end, out the back of a store, is sometimes it's accident. A lot of the time it's employees leaving doors open, things like that.
Yeah. get an alert to say that door's supposed to be shut, but it's been left open, someone can go check it. But I guess combining door access, sensors and cameras, we can say, well, actually, one badge in, camera said 2 people were there, and we get to correlate them different data points then to deliver a better outcome overall,
Exactly that.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I think what we've got there is the fact that we've got some real tangible ways that we can help solve some of these challenges. And I know that, a lot of retailers talk about the fact that they don't want to prosecute for theft. They don't necessarily want their staff intervening because of staff safety, etc. But all this collaboration of all this data on a single platform actually could allow them to make some different decisions and have some real impact on the bigger areas of shrinkage or loss prevention. Not the Joe Blogg on the street comes in and picks up one kind of deodorant and walks out with it. But it's actually the person that walks in and takes a whole wheelie bin of stuff, or what's happening in the supply chain, etc. These are the areas that can have a big impact, and I think that's the important takeaway. Thanks everyone for listening to part 1. We are going to be running a webinar on this entire subject, so please look out for that and join us, where we're going to dig into these topics in far more detail and actually show you some live demos of the platform in action and how it can actually deliver the outcomes that we've been talking about. So hopefully you can join us on that. And with that, thanks for listening. I've been Rob Sims, Chief Technologist for CDW.
And I've been Paige Dougherty, Enterprise Account Executive at Verkada.
Thanks everyone. See you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode. Be sure to check out the back catalogue for more great insights. Don't forget to subscribe via your favourite podcast platform so you never miss an episode. We appreciate your support. And if you have a topic you want us to cover, feel free to reach out. Catch you next time.